These are this afternoon's top stories. Court dismisses appeal of former Supervisor of Elections Wingrove George. Jamaica's COVID-19 cases continue to rise and Republicans prepare for Trump-heavy hybrid convention. Hello and welcome to the ZIZ Midday newscast. Today is Monday, the 24th of August, 2020. I'm Jason Davis. Nationally, the Court of Appeal has dismissed the appeal of Wingrove George, the former Supervisor of Elections. Wingrove George was charged with the offense of misconduct in public office arising from his actions during the 2015 general elections when he refused to announce the results of constituencies number 4 and 8. On the 26th of January 2018, Mr. George challenged the decision of the Director of Public Prosecutions to begin prosecutions and the decision of the magistrate to issue the summons. He brought an application for judicial review against the senior magistrate and the Director of Public Prosecutions. Mr. George alleged that the magistrate had no jurisdiction to try the charges. He contended that because the conduct complained of arose during the conduct of an election, the charge had to be tried by election petition filed within 21 days of the election. The senior magistrate and the Director of Public Prosecutions argued that in response that the election petition only related to matters concerning whether or not a candidate had been validly elected to the National Assembly. The trial judge, Justice Eddie Ventos, agreed with the position taken by the senior magistrate and the Director of Public Prosecutions, dismissing Mr. George's application seeking judicial review with costs. Mr. George appealed both the dismissal of his application for judicial review and the order for costs. The Court of Appeal agreed with the arguments made by the senior magistrate and the Director of Public Prosecutions. The Court of Appeal also held that the offense of misconduct in public office was an offense at common law, which is incorporated in the law of St. Kitts and Nevis and was not repealed or removed by Parliament. The Court of Appeal, however, allowed his appeal in relation to costs and ordered that both sides should bear their own costs. The opening of the Federation's borders does not depend on the completion of Phase 2 of the airport's rehabilitation project. That's according to Officer in Charge of SCASPA, the St. Christopher Air and Seaport Authority, Tafida Stewart, who says although it expected that work on Taxiway Alpha will be completed in time for October's reopening, if that doesn't happen, it will not impact the airport's reopening. She was at the time speaking at a recent media tour of the progress being made on the project.
We will be able to operate with the other two taxiways. It may take a little longer if we have a lot of traffic, but we do not anticipate a lot of traffic as soon as the airport reopens, given some of the travel restrictions that are in place. So we do not anticipate a challenge.
At present, the work on airport infrastructure rehabilitation project is moving forward on an 18-hour-a-day basis. Due to financial constraints caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, Phase 3 of the airport infrastructure rehabilitation project has been postponed to a later date. In other news, the closing ceremony for the 14th annual traditional music workshop that was scheduled for Saturday, 22nd of August, is now scheduled for Tuesday, August 25. The ceremony was postponed due to the passage of Tropical Storm Laura over the weekend. The ceremony will feature remarks from Minister of Health, Entertainment, Entrepreneurship and Talent Development, the Honorable Akila Byron Nisbet, as well as an address by Minister of Education, Youth and Culture, the Honorable John L. Powell. The students will also be presented with certificates and prizes. The ceremony will be held at Zach's Historical Cultural Library and Museum at Buckley's Estate and will begin at 4:30 in the afternoon. Regionally, in Jamaica, just 3 days ago, the country recorded 98 new cases and a 15th COVID-related death. The Ministry of Health and Wellness says 88 of the new cases were from current samples tested between August 10 and 17. The Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Jacqueline Bissessor-McKenzie, says many of those persons likely contracted the virus over the Emancipation and Independence holiday periods due to a number of gatherings. More in this CVM News report.
Up to Thursday, August 20, there were 31 COVID-19 patients in hospitals across the island, 55 persons in facility isolation, and 336 in home isolation. But with increasing COVID-19 cases, how will the health sector cope? Health Minister Dr. Christopher Tufton says as more persons test positive, it becomes increasingly difficult to house these patients at hospitals and other institutions.
The option of housing some of these positive cases, the ones that are asymptomatic, in a home context is going to have to be more a norm than an exception, because it's just about how you manage the sheer numbers. And frankly speaking, persons who don't require hospitalization because they're asymptomatic, what they really want or should be given is an isolation facility where a home could be quite suitable.
He adds that elderly persons and those with comorbidities are the ones being given priority at hospitals and other facilities. At the same time, Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Health, Dunstan Bryan, says more rooms for quarantine are being procured.
We have entered into arrangements with 2 local hotels to provide accommodations for quarantine facilities, with approximately 400 rooms being made available.
But President of the Medical Association of Jamaica, Dr. Andrew Manning, stresses that if the spike in COVID-19 cases continues, the health sector's resources will be stretched.
We need to get persons to realize that we have to slow the spread of this thing and keep the numbers down to a manageable level. There's no if or but about it. If the numbers rise beyond a certain point, it's going to be a catastrophe.
Aladdin Love for CVM Live.
The UE Five Islands campus in Antigua has taken steps to ensure that educators are armed with the tools necessary for online learning. Following the government-mandated shutdown in March, face-to-face classes were suspended. And because of the fluidity of the COVID-19 pandemic, the Office for Online Learning conducted a comprehensive course on online delivery to the teaching staff. This allowed lecturers to transition to e-learning platforms, so they'll now be able to deliver their coursework and student assessments in that environment. The UE said a phased hybrid structure of engagement will be implemented for the academic year 2020-2021. Classes will be delivered online, with exceptions made for courses and programs requiring lab work. Students were also required to submit requests to the registrar, who will then activate the requisite COVID-19 protocols. Online learning will continue in semester 2 with very limited face-to-face teaching allowed. The UE Five Islands said planning and design are ongoing as school administrators are determined to successfully deliver an effective hybrid model specific to the needs of the campus. Internationally, U.S. President Donald Trump is hoping to revive his re-election campaign at the Republican National Convention, which kicks off on Monday. During the 4-day event, the party will officially nominate him as its candidate for the November poll. They hope to energize his supporters and woo undecided voters for an election that polls suggest Trump could lose. Al Jazeera's Kimberly Halkett reports from the White House in Washington, D.C.
For a president fond of large political rallies, the 2020 Republican National Convention was supposed to be Donald Trump's campaign crescendo, helping him cruise toward re-election in November. But COVID-19 and social distancing has dashed Trump's plan to accept his party nomination in front of thousands of MAGA hat-wearing supporters. Trump's claim of creating jobs has also disappeared as thousands of businesses have closed permanently. Millions of people are out of work, and the stock market has seen historic gains wiped out.
We did it. We built the greatest economy in the history of the world, and now I have to do it again. You know what that is? That's right. That's God testing me.
Trump blames China for not halting the virus, but a majority of Americans blame him for a mismanaged coronavirus response. And that's hurt Trump in the polls. With weeks until the election, he trails his Democratic rival, Joe Biden.
problem is, after 4 years in office, people now know what to expect from a Donald Trump administration. And it's really tough for people to not think about a re-election campaign or as anything other than a decision about the incumbent. And so I'm not sure that the playbook that worked for Trump in 2016 is going to work this year in 2020.
With few new ideas, some people are accusing the president of employing scare tactics to round up votes. At campaign stops, Trump says if Biden is elected, taxes and crime will go up, the stock market will go down. But when it comes to his own campaign promises, his vision isn't clear.
What are your top priority items for a second term?
Well, one of the things that will be really great, you know, the word experience is still good. I always say talent is more important than experience. I've always said that.
Due to the pandemic, most states will allow voters to mail in ballots instead of in-person voting. Trump's arguing, with little evidence, that mail-in ballots are open to fraud. Democrats say Trump's insistence people vote in person during the pandemic is an attempt to suppress the vote. With both sides accusing each other of rigging the election, results of the 2020 vote are uncertain. Will Trump accept if he loses?
The president has always said he'll see what happens and make a determination in the aftermath.
Donald Trump is counting on the Republican convention to inject new life into his lagging re-election bid. He's planning multiple appearances before pared-down crowds of supporters at a week-long event that kicks off in Charlotte, North Carolina, and culminates here at the White House on Thursday, when Trump will officially accept the Republican Party's presidential nomination. Kimberly Helkett, Al Jazeera, the White House.
More than 200,000 people have rallied in the Belarusian capital to demand President Alexander Lukashenko step down after his contested re-election. The daily protests are entering their third week, but Lukashenko is refusing to resign and has threatened to deploy the army to respond to any unrest. As protesters called for his resignation, Lukashenko was filmed flying over the city in a helicopter wearing an armed vest alongside his 15-year-old son, who was also wearing combat gear. He emerged from the helicopter carrying a rifle. Al Jazeera's Step Vasson reports from Minsk in Belarus.
After a week of threats coming from Lukashenko, this is a reply from the people of Belarus. Tens of thousands took to the streets of Minsk in defiance, their fear replaced by anger. While armed soldiers and police were standing by, families with small children shouted the president should step down.
Yes, we have passed police several times, and we're not afraid anymore, and our children are not afraid too.
Do you think Lukashenko now will get the message?
I don't think he's able to get the message. But I hope people around him will still be getting these messages more and more and believe in his team and join our team.
Why are you not scared?
I don't know. I'm just not scared. Because, you know, the good people win, always. It could be earlier, could be later, but they win always.
Put Lukashenko in a detention vehicle, these people are chanting. Meanwhile, all Soviet music is coming from the government's loudspeakers, along with orders to stop the unofficial gathering.
While the authorities keep ordering them to leave the square, these people are not going anywhere. With the military on standby, this is the biggest act of defiance we've seen in Belarus so far.
Since the disputed presidential vote on August 9, protesters have been defying the authorities by gathering every day, calling for an end to President Lukashenko's 26-year rule. Ahead of Sunday's rally, the Belarus army rolled into the central city streets. A warning to those marching that any unrest near monuments and statues would not be tolerated. But the feared violent crackdown did not happen. When tens of thousands marched towards Lukashenko's residence, armed police blocked the road. In what looked like a scene from a war movie, Lukashenko was filmed flying over the city in a helicopter wearing an armed vest, together with his 15-year-old son in combat gear. Then the president emerged from the helicopter carrying a rifle. When he thanked police who guarded him at the palace, they told him they will stay with him until the bitter end. An end that might just have come a little closer. Step Vassen, Al Jazeera, Minsk.
And now for the weather. Present weather shows fair skies with a moderate breeze of 14 miles per hour from the east-northeast. Seas are moderate with waves of 3 to 5 feet. The weather for today will be partly cloudy to sometimes cloudy with a 50% or moderate chance of showers. And for tonight, partly cloudy to sometimes cloudy with a 60% or moderate chance of showers. Sunset today will be at 6:31 p.m. and sunrise tomorrow at 5:56 a.m. And that brings us to the end of the ZIZ Midday Newscast. Join us this evening for these stories and more in detail. Thank you for tuning in. I'm Jason Davis.